Does she even belong here? Someone should tell her to leave.
They judged him by his uniform.
Step away from her! You're making things worse!
They had no idea what tomorrow would bring.
The lobby of Sterling Tower went silent the moment the old woman fell. Nobody moved. Nobody except a janitor named Marcus Reed, who dropped his mop and ran to her side before anyone else even looked up from their phones. "Get away from her," the building manager snapped, grabbing Marcus by the arm. "You're going to make it worse. Let security handle this." Marcus didn't let go of the woman's hand. "She needs help now," he said quietly. "Not in 5 minutes." Manager's favorite employees laughed. One of them pulled out her phone to record. "Look at him," she whispered. "Thinks he's a hero." Nobody in that lobby knew who the woman on the floor really was. By morning, every single person who laughed that day would be unemployed. Stay with me, because this story is about to show you exactly what happens when you underestimate the people you look down on. Marcus Reed had worked at Sterling Tower for 6 years. He mopped the marble floors every morning before the sun came up. He cleaned the executive bathrooms on the 40th floor, where men in $1,000 suits walked past him without a glance. He fixed the elevator buttons when they stuck, emptied the trash bins in offices where his name was never once asked. He was good at his job. Quiet, reliable, the kind of employee a building depended on and never thanked. But for Marcus, Sterling Tower wasn't just a job that overlooked him. It was a job that ground him down, one small cruelty at a time. The building manager, Gary Hutchins, had made Marcus's life difficult from the very first week. It started small. Marcus's schedule, accidentally, changed to the worst shifts. His requested time off for his daughter's school events denied, while other employees got theirs approved without question. Then it got personal. Gary made comments about Marcus being lucky to have this job, reminded him more than once that people like him were easy to replace, and once, in front of 3 other staff members, asked Marcus if he'd actually finished high school after Marcus corrected an error on a supply order. Marcus never reported it. He'd watched 2 other employees try that before him, both black, both gone within a month, reassigned, written up for things nobody else got written up for, or simply not scheduled anymore until they quit. So Marcus did what he'd always done. He kept his head down. He did his job well. He went home to his daughter every night and left Gary Hutchins behind at the door. Gary, meanwhile, ran Sterling Tower like his personal kingdom, and he'd built himself a court of favorites to make sure nobody challenged him. There were 7 of them. Denise ran the front desk and decided, most days, who got greeted warmly and who got ignored. Priya handled scheduling and made sure Gary's favorites always got the easy shifts. Then there was Kayla, barely 2 years out of college, who'd been promoted twice in 8 months for reasons nobody in the building could quite explain, except that she was always in Gary's office with the door closed, always the first one he defended in meetings, always seen leaving late with him on the nights his wife was out of town. Kayla wasn't the only one. There had been Ashley before her, and before that, a woman named Britt who'd left suddenly with a severance package nobody was allowed to discuss. The pattern was quiet, but everyone who'd worked there long enough knew it. Gary rewarded loyalty a certain kind of way, and the women in his circle who played along rose fast, while the ones who didn't seemed to disappear from the schedule entirely. Rounding out the circle were 3 security staff and a maintenance supervisor, all of whom owed their positions directly to Gary, and all of whom understood, without ever being told outright, exactly what was expected of them. Laugh at his jokes, back up his stories, and never, under any circumstances, side with someone Gary had decided didn't matter. Marcus had watched this circle operate for 6 years. He'd learned to stay far enough outside it that he couldn't be pulled in, and far enough away that he couldn't be crushed by it either. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, an elderly woman walked through the front doors of Sterling Tower, and the careful distance Marcus had built for 6 years wasn't going to be enough to protect him anymore. She looked like nobody important. An elderly black woman, maybe in her late 70s, wearing a plain gray coat and carrying a worn leather handbag. She moved slowly, leaning slightly on a cane, and stopped just inside the lobby to look up at the building's towering atrium. Denise didn't get up from the front desk. Gary walked past her with his coffee, glanced over for half a second, and kept walking, assuming, the way he always assumed about people who looked like her, that she didn't belong there. "Ma'am, this is a private office building," Denise finally called out, not bothering to stand. "Are you looking for somewhere else?" The woman explained she was there to see someone on the 12th floor. Nobody checked. Nobody helped her find the elevator. She was left standing there, confused. While the morning rush moved around her like she was invisible, Marcus was across the lobby, buffing a scuff mark off the floor, when he noticed her sway slightly on her feet. He was already moving toward her when her cane slipped out from under her. She went down hard, her hip hitting the marble floor with a sound that finally made a few people glance up from their phones. And that's when everything changed. Marcus reached her before anyone else even stood up. "Ma'am. Don't move yet, I'm right here." He knelt beside her, keeping his voice low and steady, the same voice he used with his own mother when she'd had her hip surgery 2 years earlier. "Can you tell me your name?" "Ruth," she managed, wincing. "Ruth Coleman." "Okay, Ruth, I need you to stay still for me. I'm calling for help right now." That's when Gary arrived, more annoyed than concerned. "What happened here?" he demanded, looking at Marcus like he was the problem instead of the solution. "She fell. I think she may have hurt her hip. I already called." "Get away from her," Gary snapped, grabbing Marcus by the arm. "You're not trained for this. You're going to make it worse. Let security handle it." Marcus didn't let go of Ruth's hand. "She needs help now, not in 5 minutes. Kayla walked over, phone already raised, filming instead of helping. "Look at him," she said to Denise, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "Thinks he's a doctor now." A ripple of laughter passed through Gary's circle, gathered now at the edge of the scene like spectators at a show. Ruth Coleman, lying on the cold marble floor, heard every word of it. Nobody in that lobby had any idea what those words were about to cost them. Paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. Marcus had stayed by Ruth's side the entire time, ignoring Gary's repeated demands to get back to work and stop making a scene. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Ruth gripped Marcus's hand tightly. "What's your name, young man?" "Marcus. Marcus Reed." "You Marcus," she said. "You're the only one who treated me like a person today." What Ruth Coleman didn't say, what nobody in that lobby had any reason to suspect, was that she wasn't just an elderly woman who'd wandered into the wrong building. Ruth Coleman was the founder of Coleman Capital, the private investment group that had quietly purchased Sterling Tower 8 months earlier. She rarely made public appearances. She preferred to walk through her properties unannounced, dressed plainly, just to see how her buildings and her employees actually treated the people who walked through their doors. She'd been on her way to a scheduled meeting on the 12th floor that morning. A meeting Gary Hutchins didn't even know was on the calendar, because it had been arranged directly through corporate, bypassing the building manager entirely. Ruth had planned to sit quietly through that meeting, review some reports, and leave without anyone realizing who she was. Instead, she'd been left standing alone, ignored at the front desk, and then filmed on the floor by a laughing employee while the building manager tried to shove away the one person who'd actually helped her. By the time the ambulance doors closed, Ruth had already made a phone call, and the person on the other end of that call was about to walk into Sterling Tower with a very different kind of authority. Later that afternoon, a man in a dark suit walked into Sterling Tower carrying a leather folder. His name was Robert Ellis, Coleman Capital's head of operations. He didn't go to the front desk. He walked straight into Gary's office and closed the door. "I need the security footage from this morning's lobby incident," Robert said. "All of it, every angle." Frowned, confused. "Is this about the woman who fell?" "I already filed an incident." "Read your report," Robert said flatly. "It doesn't match what I'm about to show you." He opened his laptop and played the footage. Gary watched himself on screen, grabbing Marcus's arm, telling him to back away. He watched Kayla raise her phone, laughing, filming instead of helping. He watched Denise ignore Ruth entirely when she first walked in, sending her off toward an elevator without so much as checking who she was there to see. "That woman," Robert said, "is Ruth Coleman, founder and majority owner of the company that owns this building. She was here for a scheduled meeting with the board. Color drained from Gary's face. I didn't know. That's exactly the problem, Robert said. You didn't know. So you treated her exactly the way you treat everyone you've decided doesn't matter. And that's not new information to us, Gary. We've had complaints on file about you for over a year. When still, employee complaints about scheduling retaliation, about targeting certain staff, about other things involving certain members of your team that HR flagged twice and you convinced them to drop. He closed the laptop. Ms. Coleman wants a full review of every person in that lobby this morning. Every single one, by tomorrow morning. Had no idea just how far that review was about to reach, or that it would end with his own name at the very top of the list. The next morning, every employee who had been in the lobby during the incident was called into the main conference room. Whispers spread fast, something about corporate, something about the woman who fell. Marcus was called in too. He almost didn't go, assuming it was some kind of write-up for causing a scene, exactly as Gary had warned him the day before. When he walked in, Ruth Coleman was already seated at the head of the table, her hip in a brace, her cane resting against the chair beside her. The room went completely silent the moment she looked up. "Most of you don't know who I am," she said. "That was intentional. I like to see how people are treated when no one thinks anyone important is watching." She looked directly at Gary. "Yesterday I fell in your lobby. I was ignored at the front desk. I was left on the floor while your manager tried to physically remove the one person who was actually helping me. And while I lay there in pain, one of your employees found it entertaining enough to film." Kayla's face had gone pale. She stared at the table, unable to meet Ruth's eyes. "I've reviewed the footage," Ruth continued. "I've also reviewed a year's worth of complaints filed against this building's management that were quietly buried. Complaints about how certain employees were treated. Complaints about how certain employees were promoted. I know exactly what kind of workplace this has been." Started to protest. Ruth raised a hand, and he fell silent. "Effective this morning, Gary Hutchins is terminated as building manager, along with every staff member who laughed, filmed, or stood by while an elderly woman was left on the floor of a building I own." Gasps rippled through the room. "There is exactly one person in this room," Ruth said, "who did his job without needing to know who I was, and who I now understand has been doing his job with excellence for 6 years, while being made to feel small every single day for it." Every eye turned to Marcus. Marcus sat frozen, unsure if he was about to be fired or praised. "Marcus Reed," Ruth said, "you knelt beside a woman you'd never met, in front of a manager ordering you to walk away, and you didn't move. I've since learned what it cost you to work in this building for as long as you have. That ends today." She slid a folder across the table toward him. "Effective immediately, I'm appointing you building manager of Sterling Tower, full salary, full benefits, and my personal recommendation for advancement within Coleman Capital." Marcus stared at the folder. "Don't just want someone who follows rules," Ruth said. "I want someone who does what's right when following the rules would have meant walking away. That's rarer than people think, and it should never have taken this long for someone to notice yours." Gary, gathering his things at the far end of the table, muttered something about unbelievable under his breath. Ruth didn't even turn to look at him. "What's unbelievable," she said calmly, "is thinking cruelty has no cost until someone with the power to notice finally does." The end of that day, Gary Hutchins, Kayla, Denise, Priya, and the rest of his circle were escorted out of Sterling Tower for the last. Months later, Sterling Tower looked different, not in its marble floors or gleaming windows, but in the way people moved through it, under Marcus's leadership. Every employee went through training on one simple rule: treat every person who walks through those doors like they matter, because you never know who they really are, and it shouldn't matter anyway. Ruth Coleman still visits from time to time, always unannounced, always dressed plainly. Marcus Reed still remembers every word that was said to him in that lobby and every year before it, not with anger, but as a reminder of exactly the kind of leader he never wants to become. Sometimes the person you overlook has been carrying more than you'll ever know. And sometimes, the person doing the mocking is the only one who was ever really being tested. If this story reminded you that kindness and dignity always matter even when no one's watching, let me know in the comments. And subscribe, because there's a story just like this one waiting for you next week.